Oh, wow, this is a big crowd. So, where do you see yourself in 5 years' time? So I used to dread this question. It always made me feel as if I should know the answer to this, rather than just making it up as I go along as I normally do. And I felt bad that I didn't inherently know what my goals were. Yet often when managers talk about setting goals, this is one of the first things they ask. There's this expectation that someone has already taken the time to stop and think about all this stuff, that someone knows what their big goals should be. And a lot of the learning material out there about goals tends to be more about what comes after someone has come up with a goal. So things like SMART or GROW, it's all about helping people reach their goals. But it all assumes that people already know what they want to do. So what if someone has no idea? How do you help them to figure that all out? So the thing that I've started doing with the people that I manage is explicit goal-setting workshops. So to get people to think about big things, blue sky, and get them to reflect on all of that stuff. So before going into the kind of nitty-gritty details of coming up with more granular and achievable goals, we want them to brainstorm all the different things that they could be doing. So this workshop is about generating as many ideas as possible. So usually you can already get a sense of which things are important to someone, but the focus here is really on going wide rather than deep. And then later on, you can help them with choosing which goals are most important to them and then fine-tuning them and making them more achievable. So the format of these workshops depends a lot on the person. So it can either be as a one-off thing, or if there's a lot to discuss, we can split it out over several catch-ups. And I normally leave it up to each person about how much prep they need for this. Some are just happy to jump in and get all the questions thrown at them, but other people prefer to get them beforehand and have more time and space to reflect about these things. So it's easier to give someone these questions or ideas beforehand in an email, via Slack, whatever works, so that people can get in that right mindset of all of this. And the most important thing is providing the appropriate amount of time and space for that person. And there are typically 4 different areas of types of questions that I ask during these type of workshops. And that's what I mainly want to talk about. So there are values, future, current skills, and current role. And the reason why it's laid out like this is so that we have 2 axes. So on the left, we have the questions that are more inward-facing, so looking at the intrinsic. And then on the right, we have the more external factors, like environment, the world, other people. And then at the top, we have the ideal world, the things that we would like to see. And at the bottom, we have our current state. So different people will need different prompts to get them thinking about things. And I found that splitting it up this way, it makes it easier to see which things are people are more drawn to and which things they're more motivated by. So I'll go through the 4 areas in this order, because if you're doing it as a workshop, it makes the most sense following this pattern, starting with the internal ideal, then going big picture, and then ending kind of on the current role and current state. And especially because the answers to things in kind of the early phases, they can influence the things that you ask later on. For instance, if someone says, you know, I really like being, I really value doing things efficiently. If they say that during the values phase, later on, you can ask, well, do you get to do things efficiently in your current role? So a lot of this is fluid and will influence each other, and it really depends on the person, on how you shape these workshops. So, first section is values. So this is about getting people to look inwards and to get them to stop and think about what their ideal self is and what they believe about themselves. So this is all about asking questions to get them to reflect and think about who they are and how they do things. So ask things like, what are the building blocks that make up you? What is your purpose, your passion, your motivation? Where do you get your energy from? So these are just example questions. It's by no means an exhaustive list, but I wanted to highlight the types of questions that you should be thinking of. And an extra thing that you can do here is get people to fill in personality tests or quizzes or things like that beforehand, so that you can bring something along to discuss. And even if they don't agree with the answers, which tends to be the case, it's a really useful discussion to have, and it's a good conversation starter. The second area is all about the future. So here you want to look at the larger world and the person's ideal place in it. What impact do they want on the world? What are their life goals? So ask questions to get people thinking what their ideal life and career would be. So this is one of the hardest things to do, but given enough time and space, I think people are able to come up with stuff here. And I've noticed that that first question of imagine you're retiring and looking back at your life, that's generally easier for people to answer than where do you see yourself in 5 years' time? Mainly because you're not really asking for concreteness yet. People don't have to have a plan yet about how they're going to achieve it. It's just getting them to think about the biggest thing that they want to do in their lives. The other stuff is to ask things more about the day-to-day. So what does work-life balance look like? What does your ideal day look like? So while we are talking about this in a work context, don't limit people to think about only work stuff. It's been mentioned a couple of times during this conference already, but things like exercise, meditation, it can help people a lot. And if that's something that your people want to get better at or want to do more of, you should be taking some time to help them figure out how they can achieve that. And finally, for some people, it might be they might need anti-goals. So what are the things that they don't want to have happen in their lives? So these are things like, I never want to be bored, or I never want to work overtime. Third area is looking at their current role. So this brings it back to the day-to-day and is a good time to reflect on the short term. So how have their past few weeks or months been? So get people to reflect on their current role and how they fit into the company. So ask questions like, what are the challenges of the role? What would they miss if they left this role? It's all about getting an understanding of what they think are areas that they could work on, improve on, or just generally like and want to do more of. An extra thing that you can do here is use a job description or a career development framework or something like that to help with these discussions. And if your company doesn't have these, get them to find them from other companies. There are plenty out there. And if it works as a prompt for the person that you're trying to help, use it. So final area is current skills. So this is getting people to reflect inwards again and get them thinking about what their strengths and weaknesses are. So ask things to figure out what their current skills are and what they should get better at. Now, at this point, you'll have answers from all the other areas, potentially, and it's a good time to ask them more specific questions. Also, if they already have a specific role in mind that they want to end up in, it's really worth using that to compare to and use and do a sort of skills gap analysis or something like that. So those are 4 areas of questions to ask. And it can easily be that one person is drawn to only one area or only to very specific questions in one area. while someone else is drawn to two completely different areas. The point of these questions is not to have answers in every single section, but rather to have them as prompts, as conversation starters. And once you have the answers to these, it should be easier to make the actual jump to goals. So in the end, all of this is mainly to get people to really reflect and think about what they want to do, to lead them down that rabbit hole and get them thinking about all of this type of stuff. So I think goals are some of the most important things that managers can help with. Because if they don't, we risk creating the human equivalent to technical debt. So waking up one day and realizing that you don't really like the person that you've become, or wishing you had focused on different skills, different passions, or different goals. So where do you see yourself in 5 years' time? So I don't think you ever really need to know the answer to that question. But whatever you do, you should always be thinking about what's next for you. So you need to understand who you are as a person and what you want from life. And as leaders, you should be helping your team to figure this out. So I'll leave you with this. Which way you want to go depends on where you want to go. So tomorrow or later this week, whenever you get back into the office, don't just get straight back to work. Make some time to stop and think about all the things that you've learned and heard about this week. Think about what's next for you and for your team and how to get there. So, thanks for listening.